Welcome to PintheQ Productions. If you are interested in the culture of the fire service and keeping tradition alive, you have come to the right place. Now sit back and relax with your brothers and sisters and enjoy the show.
My name's Police Officer Ali Klamasi. I'm with the Port Authority Police ARFF unit at Newark Airport. I've been an ARFF officer for about 6 years, a police officer with the Port Authority since 2002. Before then, I was a New York City cop for about 3 years. I came into the ARFF unit in 2014 when the unit was started, or when it was expanded, and I haven't looked back since. It's been very enjoyable. I enjoy working around the aircraft. I enjoy doing the firefighter and police function that my job entails. We're a pretty unique job in that we do both police and firefighter functions.
So, when you went to the police academy and graduated, did you have any aspirations to become a firefighter at that time?
No. All I ever wanted to do was become a cop. When I came onto this job in 2002, it was kind of I wasn't expecting it. We went through the police academy and we learned basic firefighting techniques, and basically you're a basic firefighter. They're not structural, but basically put on a Scott air pack and put on your bunker gear and do what you have to do to rescue people, effect the rescue.
Isn't that what's so great about the Port Authority, that it gives you multiple options outside of just being a police officer, which in itself is a heroic job, but on top of that you're also opening other doors like firefighting and other type of rescue situations, right?
It was wonderful. I mean, just the fact that I got this firefighting training, I grew to enjoy it, and it put me into a unit like this, an ARFF unit, where I work around these aircraft. I work in an airport environment, something that I always want to do. I can't ask for anything better than this.
Sarge, tell me about how you got involved in this, and then from what I understand, you just recently graduated from the Fire Academy?
Yeah, my name's John Madigan, Sergeant, Port Authority Police, assigned to the Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Unit. I got out of training in March of this year. 19 years on patrol. What's great about this job is it gave you an opportunity, before getting stale on patrol and lethargic, have an opportunity to kind of change a pace and jump into the firefighting. They give you about a 3-month academy of firefighting. Currently I'm assigned to Newark Airport and Teterboro Airport, which two totally different animals when it comes to the firefighting and rescuing. Up here you're dealing with the larger commercial jets. Up at Teterboro we have the smaller private jets. So total two different dynamics.
So this is Singapore Airline. It's the longest flight in the world, non-stop flight. It's anywhere from 17.5 to 18.5 hours, depending on winds. And depending on the winds, they're going to do the polar route or not. This is a non-stop flight directly to Singapore. They have at least 2 sets of crew. One crew is flying, obviously, at any one time, and the other crew is in a crew rest area. This is all economy plus or higher, because they have so much fuel in this size aircraft that they can't have A normal flight for an Airbus A350 might have 300 people, but this aircraft is going to have about 160, 170 people, just because of the amount of fuel that they need to complete that flight.
So this was sort of the similar one this morning, right? Did the alert?
Yeah. We had an MD-11 alert this morning, so we had the 3-engine. So as you're driving, obviously you're staying away from the aircraft, but you also have to worry about the wings and all different structures on the vertical stabilizer, the horizontal stabilizer. You have to know your clearance from these from obviously the wings. You're very high, you can clip it and just rip it right away.
If we cut them off, it's a pretty big deal. We have to be retrained and go through the whole process of learning the rules of the taxiways.
Obviously the aircraft don't have directional signals, so that's what experience comes. You know, you kind of know where the aircraft are going by what gate they turn out of, if they landed or took off, which way they're going. If there's handlers coming out with wands, we use all these visual cues to kind of have an idea where the aircraft are going before they go that way.
Welcome back to PintheQ Podcast here at Newark Airport, well known as the EWR. I'm here with the sergeant who has been showing us this awesome piece of apparatus, and obviously we've never done anything like this before at an airport, and it has been quite the adventure so far. So Sarge, you were kind of showing us some of the instruments that you have here, the turret up front, and you're kind of going over some of the responsibilities that the operator would have. I'm looking at all these components, all these gauges. I'm looking at my fuel tank. So on the left, I'm looking at foam, right, and on the right, I'm looking on your water source.
Right. So like any emergency, it's teamwork. The driver's got to get us there safe, first and foremost. But in addition to that, he has the ability to deploy. He's in charge of the bumper turret, which is directly in front of him. I would be in charge of the roof turret. As we're rolling, we have the capability of getting the water pump activated, and then with the controls, he's able to not only drive as we pull up to the emergency aircraft, but you can just get the water flowing.
Okay, so by this, use this joystick here is how we control the. Oh, I see. So that's controlling the turret.
So the truck, we carry 3,000 gallons of water.
Okay.
We can high flow or low flow. With the two cannons going at once, we could empty the truck pretty quick. Now, we were just playing with it a few minutes ago. That's letting us know that we're starting to run low on water. So we either got to get other trucks here, or we're going to have to ask for additional help and hook up to a hydrant.
That's great. So all of these, instruments inside this well here, if you will. How much training is involved in this piece of apparatus?
You get about 40 hours, a full work week, learning the ins and outs of the truck. The bays on the side with all the equipment, if we have to get out and get hands-on, which we normally do, as well as the radios and working what we call the product, the water, the foam.
So we're pretty much at an empty truck, maybe about 200, 300 gallons of residual water at the bottom. So this is on this size line. If we had a bigger emergency, we'd actually use a larger line. But this is going to take anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes to fill up at 3,000 gallons.
That's good, Chris. Going to put you to work today, buddy.
You're gonna hit a low spot, and you gotta go some more. You'll see where my go on. Right pumpers or street fire trucks to this. If we needed water to get pumped by you, we would want a certain PSI. Anything above the 80, then you got to worry about the plumbing itself on the truck. So we're going to tell them, whoever's pumping the water, you know, to lower your pump pressure or speed, and you want to keep it below 80. There's a different type of fire extinguishers, whether it's metal, dry chem, a water tank, and a halotronic extinguisher for the different type of fires. Depending on what we have, we're gonna take out what we need. Over here, we have 200 feet of hose line for both sides. We have an electric fan for to evacuate smoke, or if we have to cool off brakes. We're gonna deploy some fans on the landing gear and cool off the hot brakes. There's some different electric Hearst tools, cutter. We have a spreader, we have a combi tool, and we have a ram. Depending on what we need it for, we're going to take out. We have the charger built in, so if the battery runs out, we're just going to take it directly from the truck. It's always being charged with the plugs here. Where we fill the truck, the pump, depending on what, you know, if we want to fill up the truck quick, we're going to use a larger diameter hose. If we're just going to, normally we just fill up the truck with a smaller diameter hose. We have different fittings, FDNY fittings. Any maintenance on the engine, check the oil, the def, filling up the fuel, we're going to do from over here. We have access to the rear of the truck or the engine on both sides. Just basically checking the oil, that's all we're doing. We have automotive that does the rest, any kind of maintenance. There's some equipment back here like shovels, spotlights. Some of the trucks without snozzles, we have ladders. Just gonna deploy them electrically. Once you put in 24 foot, come all the way down. Just gonna deploy from here. We also have a little giant ladder on our smaller truck, our truck 1. We have to deploy quickly.
What's happening, everybody? I'm Al,
And I'm Devin.
and we are Grey Ghost Studios. We are also the proud sponsor of episode 28 of PintheQ podcast. We too have a little YouTube channel going on, and if you want to check it out, head over to YouTube, type in Grey Ghost Studios, check out some of our videos. If you like them, like them. If you want to subscribe. You can also check us out at Grey Ghost Studios on,
Instagram.
because we got one of those too. Now enough about us. Back to the episode.
Enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to PintheQ podcast. We are in Newark, New Jersey at EWR, or everyone likes to call it Newark Airport. And we were with the Chief of Airport Fire Rescue. So Chief, I know who you are, and I had the pleasure of getting to know some of the operations here today at the airport. But why don't you tell our guest who you are?
My name is Tom Wieczerzak, and I'm the Chief of Aircraft Rescue Firefighting for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And we're happy to host you here today.
Well, I appreciate it very much. And we, Chris Hansen and I had an opportunity to go with your crew out in one of the crash trucks, out into the tarmac, and kind of get a feel. There's a plane going by as we speak. Kind of getting a feel of what happens here and the operations of what you guys do, because I know you're familiar with my show, and we do a lot of different kind of firefighting. We just did an episode of Marine One in Jersey City, so our guests got to see some of what we do on the water. But now we're talking about the air.
Yeah.
And it's a much different type of firefighting.
Very different, very unique.
So Chief, tell me, why don't you bring me back to some of that grassroots, about Tommy? Like when you were looking to get into the fire service, how did it all start for you?
Wow. So it goes back to I think it's every boy's dream to become a firefighter or a police officer, something in public service. My father was an electrician in New York City, so I really didn't have anything that was relating to public service. But my great-grandfather was the fire marshal and the fire chief for the U.S. Army in the 30s and the 40s, 50s as well. And he served at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, as well as Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. And as a kid, I found his helmet in my grandmother's basement in Brooklyn.
Oh, cool.
And it was something that I liked to wear it, and I never understood the tradition behind it. And there was something that just... You saw a fire truck go by, the FDNY in Middletown Township, and them coming around for their fun drive, and I had a drive for it, and I didn't realize that as I grew older and matured, going into your teenage years, of seeing how noble of a job it really was, whether you're a volunteer or looking to do it to bring a paycheck home.
Right.
And that's what drew me into it. So, as a teenager, I got into the Explorers and the Cadets in Middletown. I actually started with EMS. I became an EMT.
Like most firefighters do.
Yeah, it's actually a unique path. And then, started my way in as a firefighter in Middletown Township. And worked my way up through the ranks there.
And that's Middletown Township in Monmouth County.
In Monmouth County, correct? Yeah, known as the world's largest volunteer fire department.
Right.
That's where I started, and I credit a lot of people that I had met there through the years who really did foster me through. Probably your listeners are probably very familiar with a name of Kevin Morrissey, who's on Task Force 1. He was a big driver. Watching me, mentoring me through the years, I definitely look at him. And unfortunately, I've also had some other mentors who have, done some bad things, and kind of gypped firefighters and police out of money. But nonetheless, I still look at the good things that they had done for me through the years. But kind of going back to it, when I had got in, I always wanted to do better. I wanted to do more. And of course, you work through the ranks. I knew that I wanted to do this as a career. I started going to the University of Maryland. They had a specific fire science program that was through the National Fire Academy. Worked my way through that. I was actually very fortunate to get a job at the time it was Navy Lakehurst, which is now morphed into Joint Base.
And that's where Dave Kanko comes into play.
Dave Kanko. That's my guy. And Dave Neal, who's been on this show before as well. Yeah, so I made my way in there, and I was very fortunate at a very young age to get in. As a matter of fact, I was delayed in starting because I wasn't even 20 years old, and they didn't know that they didn't know if I could be in the fire pension system if you were under 21 years old. We got through all that. I made it on, and I continued with my education. The Federal Fire Service is amazing in having educational opportunities with IFSAC and Pro Board certifications, and I continued to do everything that I could to advance with the training, the opportunities that were afforded to me in the department, and working up and taking advantage of all that. Eventually becoming an instructor at Middletown and then on to Monmouth County Fire Academy. And my education didn't stop. I continued on. I also have a criminal justice degree. I worked in graduate studies in management with a concentration in human resources. I recently graduated from Rutgers School of Public Administration as a certified public manager, and it goes on and on. Yeah. I never stopped learning and advancing, basically a model of continuous improvement. It's important not only to have the fireground tactics and know what we're doing on the fireground, but then there's a human element.
You have to make yourself marketable.
You do.
And especially in this climate.
Very much so in this climate. But even let's go back into our fire world. You wish you were, well, we don't wish that we were at a working fire at every moment, but you strive for that. You prepare for that moment. But a lot of the things that we have to face are back in the firehouse. They're administrative. They're dealing with all the modern day things that you see out there. Oh, another one leaving here.
Like we talked about earlier, that the mini crises.
The mini crises, exactly. So there's a lot that goes on, whether it's in the volunteer world, and this is a very real thing for the volunteer fire service as well as the career fire service. So you have to be well-rounded in not just your fire tactics. That's extremely important because when that bell goes off, we have to be there. But you need to know how to deal with all the other issues that are going on.
And that's, that's really the 90%, if you will, the stuff that happens behind the scenes. And then the 10% of the time you're out there having fun and fighting fires and doing what you got to do.
Of course.
But it's those, like we talked about, those putting out the fires, if you will.
Yes. Yeah, putting out all those small fires, the administrative fires that probably take up 95% of your time in any department. Doesn't matter what your locale is. These are the things that are happening to you, and you need to be prepared.
So when you were, starting out as a young firefighter, like, looking to advance your career and getting on, like you said, you were fortunate. You got on very young.
Fortunate.
Did you ever think you'd be where you're at today? I mean, did you ever looking back? I mean, is it humbling?
It is extremely humbling. I have to tell you, you always dream of moving along to get to the level where I am at. I'm extremely fortunate. I don't forget where I came from. I remember the people who have brought me here. And those have given me an opportunity as well.
Right,
You look at we're young faces coming up, and people take chances on us, and we have to understand we have to take chances on others in order to get into these positions here and do good for the people that work with us. I don't like to say who work for me. We work together to meet these missions, and that's important to remember, and I'm not forgetting that. And I think it's important also that I've worked through every position to get up in here, and sometimes I say that listen, I wish that my favorite position was being a captain at Joint Base on a ladder truck. Being in the right seat is the best spot in the fire service, and I miss that dearly.
Yeah.
But where we're at, this is what you work towards. This is the pinnacle of a career. This is why I went as far as I've gone with everything that I've done to be here.
It's funny. I'm very fortunate to be able to sit in that seat at work, and it comes with so much responsibility, as you know. You know better than most, but it's everyone I interview that's in a chief's position, deputy chief, battalion chief, no matter what, they all say the same thing, and I'm telling you, everyone of it, captain is best position.
It is.
Everyone I interview say, captain was my favorite spot.
I'm not saying don't advance
Right.
at all. That is not my message. Appreciate where you are.
Right.
There is a certain appreciation to have as a probationary firefighter, as just a firefighter. As a matter of fact, I hate to just say just as a firefighter. Being a firefighter for your entire career is extremely admirable, and I know a lot of men and women who were in the rank of firefighter for 25 or 30 years, and they did a great job.
Yeah.
And it's almost as like the you know the good man upstairs had wanted them to be there because they've mentored hundreds, if not thousands, of people to make sure that we're able to get home on each and every call and get out of the firehouse.
Yeah, and it's funny. We talk to in the show. We get to talk to so many great people, and we had an opportunity to speak to one of the senior guys in the house in Jersey City.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was talking to the chief, Battalion Chief Gorman, he said that senior guy, he's invaluable.
Yeah.
Because all these young guys are going to that senior guy first.
Right.
And that senior guy is the guy who's saying, hey, kid, no, you don't want to do that. Or, hey, kid, do this. And then, they're not getting to that level where they meet and come, let's say, for you, the chief. They're not, those small incidents and things aren't getting to you because they're being handled by the senior guy in the house or a senior woman in the house, which I think is a great thing. To have people like that mentoring you and watching after you. You need those people.
It's important. I mean, and you mentioned Dave Kanko, and I have to say for years here, and it's Dave is a great person in the firehouse, and I think you could go to anybody, especially in whether it's his volunteer fire department or any of the stations in Joint Base. People know a person like Dave Kanko. They know that they can go and talk to him and trust him, and get the guidance that's really going to be the right path for them.
Yeah, Dave's one of those guys, around the firehouse because I volunteer with him, and he's one of the guys at the firehouse. He doesn't say much, but when it's something he's passionate about, believe me, he's standing there and he's talking. He'll hold your hand. As elementary as that sounds, sometimes that's the best thing ever. Yeah, he's a real good people. So, Chief, tell me about this whole operation. I mean, when you took on this position, you had obviously a little bit of knowledge about aircraft fire and rescue, obviously from the Joint Base. But how is this different?
Wow. So overall, ARFF as a whole is aircraft rescue firefighting is an unknown in the fire service. And I think many firefighters think that they know it, but they truly don't. And looking across the country, there are many big airport systems that we have here. When you look at New York and New Jersey specifically, we actually have the busiest airspace in the world. Oh, those helicopters are loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows you how busy we are.
Yeah, and if anybody ever questioned the authenticity of our show,
we are really at the airport.
We are at the airport.
We are just about 200 feet away from Taxiway Zulu here at Newark Airport. So, going back to this, it's a big unknown. There's a lot that goes on in our area. We have extremely large aircraft that fly in and out of the airports, and I'm going to be hitting on training because training is a key, whether it's structural firefighting or when we get into ARFF. Our aircraft that come in here are the biggest in the world, as I keep saying here. Here at Newark Airport, you have the Boeing 747-8 flown by some foreign carriers that can have over 600 people on board and tens of thousands of pounds of Jet A fuel on board. We go over to some of our other airports at Kennedy has an Airbus A380. It's the double-decker that you see out there. It was rated by the FAA to have 1,050 people on board in a certain configuration. So now you take that aircraft, and we have lots of ambient noise. you take that aircraft and it has a hard landing, a survivable landing, because actually in aircraft incidents, 82% of incidents that happen in aviation will happen within 3,000 foot of the center of the airport on either takeoff, taxi, and landing. And that means a survivable incident there. Low impact, we're not talking about a traumatic crash into the ground, where the aircraft may break apart and you have fuel load everywhere, and then you have passengers that may need to be rescued, or even if they're self-evacuating, we have to deploy our aircraft rescue firefighting resources rapidly. So let's go into that there. We talked about the size of these aircraft, and we talk about building construction with structural firefighting, and then we talk about aircraft construction when we talk about ARFF. And it's important there because fire behavior in an aircraft acts different, no different than it does in our building fires, of how a fire is going to act in a ordinary constructed building versus a Type 5 constructed building, or even versus a fire-resistant type building.
Right.
There's going to be different reactions there. So we know how to go ahead and do that there. And in a building, we have fire stops. I'm able to close a door, or I have a fire alarm that goes off. I have a sprinkler head that may pop.
Drop ceilings.
And I can get myself away from the fire. In an aircraft incident, when you have something like a hard landing of an aircraft and it does break apart, fuel is all over the place. In a tubular environment inside of an aircraft cabin, I don't have the ability to close a door, so the smoke is coming into an area where all the passengers are, and that's, as we know, a very big danger to any type of occupant trapped in a fire scenario. So taking in all account here, we have these massive trucks. Some are carrying 3,000 gallons of water, 420 gallons of foam. Some have just 1,500 gallons of water, and I say just 210 gallons of foam. And then they have other specialty agents like Purple K, Halitron, which is an environmentally friendly version of halon as a clean agent. And these trucks have some speed to them. So the alert goes off, air traffic control says that there's a problem. These trucks are getting out to you extremely fast with a tremendous amount of firepower, in the sense of we have a lot of water to knock down stages of fire where maybe fuel is all around, where passengers are trying to get out, where we're able to suppress it really fast with our turrets that disperse anywhere from 750 to 1,250 gallons a minute of water. So we're putting a rapid big punch of fire suppression on what we have out there with the fuel loads that we encounter there. And that's something unlike you experience in a structural setting. And I'll even go more so. We work closely with the fire department in New York City. And the chiefs have even, we discussed this, of having the catastrophic scenario of an Airbus A380 or a 747 with a high passenger load. You wind up getting into a 9/11 type event, not in the sense of terrorism, but in the sense of
mass
how many
people.
mass people and mass amounts of fire. And it's unlike we've seen here.
It's an MCI nightmare.
It is an MCI nightmare. It's a fire nightmare, but what I can say is that the training that we do is intense. ARFF is the most regulated fire discipline in the country, actually throughout the world. In a municipal department, you don't have the FAA coming in and looking at your training records each and every year. You may have ISO making a visit, or POSHA if you're very unfortunate. But in any case, they're looking at everybody's training records each and every year. They're making sure that our personnel are getting live fire training.
Checks and balances are...
Everything is there. And our training modules are extremely critical of going over aircraft familiarization and construction, aircraft evacuation. How do the slides work? How do I get people out? The communications, as you saw when you're operating on the airfield. There are many elements to ensure the safety of our firefighters, so they're able to provide a world-class service to the people that are out there. Those people are having the worst day of their lives in an incident, and we're going to make sure we do our best to make that better for them. We've got a big guy coming by.
Oh, yeah. That's something huge, whoever it is.
Yeah. It's probably that UPS MD-11 coming by. Going back to China.
Yeah, so you mentioned that, and we were in the crash truck with your members, and they were talking about, they were showing us a flight to Singapore.
Yeah.
So from Newark to Singapore, 18-hour flight.
Yeah, a long time.
Right? And immediately what I thought was, okay, that's 18 hours of fuel.
Yeah.
And you're talking about all these incidents are happening close to home, if you will.
Yeah.
So if something goes bad, now you have 18 hours worth of fuel.
Yeah, that's actually a big problem that we're trained to, of course, handle there. But when an aircraft leaves here at Newark Airport and they're flying, whether it's to Orlando or going to San Francisco, or they're going across the Pacific, across the North Pole and down the Pacific Rim, they're leaving with a lot of fuel, and they're actually not meant to land immediately. They're meant to burn off all of that fuel,
Right.
and that's important. So when they do land, if they take off and they have a problem, let's say they strike birds, there's some type of mechanical issue where they come back, that's an emergency because that aircraft is landing heavy. Need lots of runway to land. They may make their brakes a little bit too hot there. That can potentially cause the fire. And that's exactly why we're here. So it's in the event of a crash or preventing a catastrophe and keeping the passengers and the crew on that aircraft safe at all elements of the flight. That's what our training is always on. That's what our deployment scheme is all based about.
What I liked was that they knew that information like that. Like
Yes.
It's not just being a firefighter. I mean, there's so much they have to learn.
Yes.
Doing this, and
Yeah.
on top of that, I have to also mention to my viewers who may not know this, but they're police officers.
Yes, that's a very unique component of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. They're Port Authority police officers, and you have to be a Port Authority police officer to be recruited into
To the firefighters,
into becoming an aircraft rescue
So
firefighter.
every one of those firefighters are police officers for the Port Authority in New York, Jersey.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's an interesting, that's interesting in itself.
It is. It's a very unique setup.
Because you're taking police officers, that will work in the street or working here at the airport,
Yeah.
and now they're now we're going to send you to be a firefighter.
Yeah. They
And-
go off into training. Yeah.
And not just a firefighter, but now you're going to have to learn how to be an airport firefighter. So
Right.
you're learning, like you talk about building construction, which I like, the construction of a fuselage and
Yeah.
the engines and the fuel and everything that goes with the hydraulic systems. It's a lot. It's a lot to take on.
It is a lot, and I have to tell you, the regulatory side of it, the Federal Aviation Administration with training is very hard on the sense of they want you to know each and every aircraft that's coming in. They don't want it to be the first time you saw a 787 was the first incident you were on. They want you to be out there, and our programs that we have are very intense on that, of not only getting into the field, but sitting in the classroom and going through those types of training evolutions, and that's important because you don't ever, it's like vehicle extrication. I don't know what model vehicle I may be cutting up next, but I need to know the basics of it. I need to know my way around modern vehicle construction and know the basic anatomy and physiology in order to get the job done. I may not know each and every car particularly, but at least know how to get my way through and do step by step. And that's exactly what our fire personnel do when they go through the training. And that's important, that they owe that to themselves, and we owe that to the traveling public there to, just give them another degree of feeling like if something does happen in the very off chance, that we're there to do our best to keep them.
What was it when you first got here and you started taking on the role as chief? Tremendous responsibility.
Correct.
What was it difficult for you at first, trying to learn this whole new world, and then or did you kind of feel like it was what you wanted to do?
Of course. So any type of change, brings some type of resistance or reluctance or maybe even second guessing. And of course, we're past that hump. And coming into any type of governmental agency has its complexities. And now just knowing what the structure of the Port Authority is, it was mandated by U.S. Congress, all right? It's bifurcated by state agency. So you start looking at the bureaucracy of it. And it's not saying anything political, but it starts to say, hey, there are many stakeholders in this game, just on the level of the Port Authority. And then you get into aircraft rescue firefighting, and there become many lanes that we have to deal with. I'm really focused on a daily basis when it comes to this, of personnel and training matters and working with the Aviation Department. And then within the Aviation Department actually running aircraft rescue firefighting, we have our deputy chiefs who you met today at lunch, and they're responsible, thank goodness, for the day-to-day operation of each airport, which is absolutely critical there. Because as we talked about kind of in the beginning here, we go 95.5%. My plate is very much so full with making sure that all of these other ends are done here and working with all the various stakeholders here, because we said we have police officers.
Right.
I have to work hand in hand with the superintendent of police of making sure that he is aware of our needs, of what personnel we may need, if promotions are going to happen, and retirement of people, because I actually have to pull from his department there.
Right.
And that's important. And then on the other hand, working with the Aviation Department, I have to see what their needs are, what the budgeting issues are, and then figuring out how am I going to get these people in or out, how am I training them, and then all the other issues that go along there, dealing with our great labor unions, dealing with the daily personnel issues that are going on, and whatever else may be the happenings of the day, our many fires that continue to come up and whatnot.
Yeah, because you take an institution this large. I mean, this is like a city in itself.
Yeah.
It really is like a city.
Yes, it is.
So you're almost well, you're not almost. You're managing all of this. So you're, like you said, you're working with multiple different entities,
multiple stakeholders to bring us to success
yeah.
here.
So what I guess is what people don't see on the back end of it is they say, oh, you're chief of the Port Authority, New York, New Jersey, fire chief. It's not just that, right? You have all these other parts of the Port Authority you're involved in.
Yeah, there is a lot more to it,
Yeah.
and then there's also, the phone calls off hour or thinking about stuff when you're on vacation or over a long weekend. If you're human and you have a care for what you do, you're constantly thinking about it. And it's easier said than done to just shut it off.
Right.
But there's a lot of work to do around here to keep this going. Whether it be from the training or the coordination with individual airports or with the aviation department, our academy. There's a lot of moving parts, and you need to keep your eye on the ball. I've definitely can say that I've matured in my public administration skills and even my organization. I thought I was organized beforehand, but if you're not, and you don't have those other things that you learn as you mature going through,
this will chew you up and
it
spit
will
you out.
chew you up and spit you out immediately. And that's important. You have to be able to adapt to the environment that you're in. I can't say that enough.
So our guests that are not familiar with any of this, I was one of them till this morning. Now I'm like pretty seasoned. To become an airport fire rescue firefighter, if you will, it's not just a fire academy.
Correct.
All right, so can you walk me through what that takes?
So, the largest provider of ARFF services outside of the Port Authority actually is the Department of Defense. So most of your aircraft rescue fire personnel come out of the Department of Defense, like a joint base, because ARFF is a major mission of whether it was the old Navy Lakehurst, McGuire Air Force Base, and now the joint base. It's a little loud. So really the basis of becoming an ARFF firefighter is your basis, your ground level is getting into Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, and then making your way up. Typically, your basic ARFF school is typically 40 hours.
Okay.
Here in the Port Authority, we actually do a 120-hour course, which is inclusive of driving these big trucks, and we also do, a fire brigade type level training, which is what they start with at the Middlesex County Fire Academy, and that's how we would do it here in this agency. But if you're on the outside, really your best ticket in is to going through DOD. Right now, I was on working with the Division of Fire Safety of establishing an aircraft rescue firefighter course for the state of New Jersey.
Oh, that's great.
And I do believe we're close. We're working on a train the trainer right now with Division in King University, but we're looking at trying to get something off the ground here with actually doing an offering of a train the trainer and then getting some stuff out to some of our airports, because I said this is an unknown, and we do have some airports around us. And I should mention that not only do we have general aviation airports, and they may not have ARFF crews because they're not certificated airports, but we are ignoring aircraft rescue firefighting in many communities. We have the busiest airspace in the world above New Jersey between New York and Philadelphia. It's actually 17% of the world's aviation is over us.
Wow. That's staggering.
It is staggering. So my point is, when we start talking about probability and statistics, even though we're in a safe industry, the chances of having something happen with a flight that may be coming from overseas or even over our airspace and landing at like an Alaire airport is a reality. You could even look at Sully with his flight over the Hudson when he landed on the Hudson there. Teterboro was an option. Granted, that's an airport that's covered by the Port Authority, but it easily could have been another general aviation airport that he puts that aircraft down on. And it's no different than any other type of airliner. If he sees a runway, such as I use Alaire just because of the length of the runway and the area that it may be, and considering the flight paths that we're very knowledgeable with. But it is a real
when you said
chance.
that to me, it was like a light bulb went off, honestly.
Yeah, and it's somewhat ignored there.
Yeah.
It's kind of my comparison, too, of when I talked about rapid intervention and vehicle extrication, where, everybody forgets vehicle extrication, even though it's the most common form of technical rescue, but everybody wants to be great at rapid intervention, where I think, quite honestly, as a fire instructor, that vehicle extrication is something that's really forgotten about out there in the field. We forget about our bread and butter type stuff there, or what are the real hazards in front of us here? And I'm just saying refocus. I'm not knocking anybody for what they're going on.
Back to the basics.
Back to the basics is an important piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Important.
So when you're here and you're getting all these people
sort of motivated. Do you find any of that, or was it a little bit of a challenge because you're talking about police officers, right? So you go from police officers now or firefighters. You got guys that come into the unit. Let's say they come off the road. You put them through the academy, become a firefighter, and you have to teach them everything.
Yeah, so that is a challenge. Cause so basically, you could have a police officer who was working at the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan for 20 years, and he wants to come over. So yeah, you do have challenges there, and it's, especially when you're getting into when we're first doing our first couple of weeks at Middlesex. We're doing your donning and doffing of SCBA. People are putting on a face mask for the first time. The issues of a claustrophobia and the things that you encounter in Fire One.
That's exactly what I mean. Because as an instructor, some people put on the SCBA for the first time, like, no.
Yeah,
I'm good.
You do get that. So those are challenges that you have to go through, and we're fortunate. There's obstacles and challenges in every agency here. We're surrounded by good people, and we're able to work through a lot of those things. So do those things happen? Yes, but we do have the mechanisms in place to put out those mini fires, remediation, whatever we need to do to get somebody through, to get them to the level that they're going to be comfortable. Because quite frankly, when they're here, my family travels through these airports as well. I could tell you that in overseeing these things, I want to make sure that the product is going out there is going to be able to save me, my wife, your family.
Right.
I don't want to see anything bad happen there to either the traveling public or that person here. So there are those challenges. That is something that happens. And you have the cultural issues, too, of how ARFF was run before the stand-up of the dedicated unit that we have here today. But of course, as you work through, you look at your program, remembering, the past and respect and those types of things.
The very premise of the show.
When you embrace those types of cultures and you have a respectful work environment and everybody's aware of what's expected of them, those are the important things to moving forward and to achieving the culture that you want.
You're a pretty young guy, Chief. Is it hard for you not to be in that front seat anymore? Is it hard for you to?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. My wife can attest to this. I tell her it all the time, and my good friend, late the acting deputy chief here at Newark, I tell him, I of course, in no terms of making it a reality, but it's always in my mind. I want to be back in that right seat, riding in a ladder truck in the worst way. There was no better time that I had than being, on the back step, in the cab, or in that right seat, or even driving. I miss and I love those days.
I miss the back step too. When I first started, from my firefighting career, I remember being on the tail step of a CF Mac with the man's favorite strap, up on the top.
I can't tell you that I ever had that. I wish I had those days.
I did. My first coat was all the way down to my knees, pull up boots.
I could only wish. It
didn't last long, but.
When it comes down to this, I work towards this. Sometimes I feel like, you could feel your career's gone by way too fast. This is absolutely what I've worked for there. I'm not going to regret any of the decisions I made. I do my best to support everybody in the field, to support all the operations, and really to make sure the mission is accomplished.
But what I think, though, what benefits everyone here is the fact that you do want to be in that seat. And the fact that you have all this passion for the fire service and how much you love what you do, that's only going to benefit everybody here.
Of course. And I take that back. You know what? My time in the fire academy, the days of living at the volunteer firehouse, back, some of the listeners can remember of, my glory days in Tinton Falls in District 1 at Wayside. I would leave the firehouse at work and I would go to the volunteer house.
Yeah.
I was also commissioner and whatnot, and I love those days. Yeah. But now you mature in every angle, whether it's as a fire officer and also as a family man.
Life has different paths.
Having a child at home, having a baby on the way, and a wife. I love being at home. I love being around my family. I love being around my father and my in-laws and everybody else. I embrace that, and I'm very fortunate to be able to go back to that. That's something that you see that some people get too attached, and you see the devastation that happens with individuals getting divorced and whatnot, and those are important things to remember too. So for those out here that are thinking that the job is everything, we love this world. I absolutely love the fire service.
Yeah, but you have to
have to know that end there, and that's so critical. I'll be John Sahatchin's programs on Are You Ready and whatnot. having family and going back to that family unit and having it as a whole, that's going to help you get through all that stuff. That's so important.
Having a support staff and people in your life that
Yeah.
are able to grab you by the elbow, and go, hey man,
Yeah.
take a break.
And-
Refocus.
And there's going to be points. My kids are going to get older. I intend to step that up a little bit more. Working at the fire academy more. Because listen, like I was saying there, I was at the volunteer firehouse all the time, working at the fire academy all the time, and I do my specialties now. I enjoy certain aspects of firefighter one, not being the coordinator at Middletown anymore. Just working lectures, working fireground details, doing vehicle extrication, working in specialties that I'm able to maybe give a little bit more edge on.
Right. So what are some of the capabilities of this unit as a whole? This unit, right? This firefighting unit. What are your capabilities for on the tarmac or around? If there's a crash in the parking lot, are you guys responding to that?
As in a crash of an aircraft incident?
No, I'm talking about just like a.
So our primary mission as ARFF is the aeronautical operating area. What does that mean? It means the taxiways, the gate areas, and whatnot. Our primary mission is to take care of the aircraft that are on there and the people who are working on them, in them, passengers on them, so on and so forth. The airport doesn't exist without the ARFF units there. So right now the capability is, of course, if there's something else that we can support in an emergency, that's done there. And our personnel do receive the training in vehicle extrication and potentially able to assist with a vehicle fire and things of that nature, or assist with a terminal fire, which, the unit has in the past there.
Right.
So the training level is there, but the primary mission is to make sure that these fire trucks are available for any incidents that may be occurring with aircraft.
And like you mentioned earlier, you have to be out of here immediately and on the road. And is that why these trucks go as fast as they go?
Yes, the 600 horsepower engines will definitely get you moving.
We were surprised, man. I got in here, I was a little surprised.
Yeah, they'll move. I mean, it's critical. You talk about things going back to basic firefighting. The fire doubling in size every 30 seconds that we go here. And then we have our fire situations with jet fuel.
Yeah.
And people potentially covered it, and the smoke that we have of filling cabins and whatnot. These trucks need to be able to be deployed in a very rapid and safe manner, and to be able to get out there and put water on that fire to get around so people can get out, and then we can get hand lines and go rescue people. I mean, that is so important.
And I saw you have a vehicle out there that has stairs on it.
Correct.
That you can deploy rapidly, because that's got to be way safer than deploying, one of those air.
Of course, and it goes down to the basics of Fire One again. When we're doing rescue of people,
Right.
What's the safest means out? A normal exit, right? When we start throwing ground ladders or even a tower ladder or straight stick out of the one of the
injuries.
Of course, and you have people of all ages and physical capability on these aircraft, and even the slides. People coming down slides, you see horrific injuries of ankles and whatnot. Granted, we're getting people away, and I'd rather see you with a broken ankle than die of smoke inhalation. But nonetheless, that is a safer option. And of course, that's saying that the aircraft is on all of its landing gear and it's perfect.
Yeah.
When we get in certain other scenarios where, people are going to have to go out slides, or we're going to have to throw a ground ladder or two to get people off, or many to on bigger aircraft. But nonetheless, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox here that are specific to an airport operation. And the amount of training is severely intense. And I think in conclusion with the training, depending upon what airport you may be assigned to and what rank you are, because there's crew chief training, has strategy and tactics included in it, and certain airports have personnel that are also trained as emergency medical responder. But you're almost about 400 hours of training by the time it's all said and done.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. It's not just the fire academy. It's
more. So you have the time that the person was in the police academy here, where they have a certain degree of fire training as well, and then it's also getting in here, and it's intense, and then it's recurrent training each and every year.
So that's exactly my point earlier, where you take a police officer who obviously went to the police academy and whatever trainings on top of that they're getting, their incidental trainings, and then they're like, okay, I want to move into the fire department side of the Port Authority. Now they're getting all this additional 400 hours of training.
Yes.
It's a lot to take on. So
it is.
Those people that are here, I mean, they want to be here.
They want to be here, and they're dedicated. They have to be here for 5 years. So once you commit, you want to come in, you're staying with aircraft rescue firefighting for no less than 5 years.
Oh, so it's a 5-year bid.
It's a 5-year commitment. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The only way to get out is to get promoted.
Oh, no kidding. So
promoted or retire.
So 5 years, or you get promoted and you can go that.
Correct.
that
Yeah,
long.
if a police officer is promoted to police sergeant, we would be moved out of the unit. We actually just had an individual fortunate enough out of Newark here that was promoted on Monday.
Oh, good for him. Congratulations. That's good. So what's been the most challenging aspect for you being part of this huge deal?
I could definitely say it's probably been the learning curve of understanding the intricacies of the Port Authority. Anybody can come here off the street with a tremendous amount of admin or public administration and even time as a fire officer. But to learn all the different layers, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's just the operational components of ARFF. It's then working with our labor relations folks,
Right.
Our human resources department, our police department. How do you order paper? How do I get a computer fixed? How do I get my iPhone fixed? I mean, there is a point of contact for everybody, and it's not just sending a form, it's learning all of the procedures that are supposed to be done.
And all those department heads.
And all those department heads. So
Yeah.
yes, it's forging relationships, understanding who you have to go to. I don't want to say that people misguide you, but there's a lot of self-learning. You have to take it upon yourself to get out there. And I like to always tell people it's management by walking around. Just staying behind the desk all day isn't going to work.
Right.
You need to be able to walk around in order to manage your functions there and know who to go to get things done in an orderly fashion, because as with any government entity, it does take a lot to move things through, especially when you're trying to make change. You're trying to get things done efficiently.
And you know how
so
well
on.
change goes over.
Resistance to change at every corner.
especially with firemen and cops.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And it's both on the career and the volunteer end. It absolutely is the
yeah.
truth.
It doesn't make a difference whether you get a paycheck or not.
And that's where it comes down to, where I say people have to adapt to their environment. The answer can't always be no, or it wasn't done this way. Things evolve. Your response area changes. Doesn't matter where you are. You need to be able to sit down, take in what you're hearing, even if what you're hearing is 100% garbage. You still need to be able to consider it, filter through it, what's important, what's not, and then actually provide feedback. I think a lot of times of what you see, whether it's here or any other agency, people don't receive the feedback and they don't understand why maybe you're not entertaining something or why something isn't working. And I believe the educational piece going back and doing it in a respectful manner is so important to forging an open environment where everybody feels included.
That dialogue.
Dialogue is the simplest terms to say it in there.
Yeah.
And that feedback is critical there to just, make everybody feel like they're putting just a percentage in.
Chief, I like to ask these questions of guys that, get to your position, and that is, how is the fire service different in your opinion? This is just your opinion. How is the fire service different from when you started to today?
Wow.
I know it's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question, and I think maybe I've seen a lot of this from working in the fire academy setting, and even being being in the fire service as an officer in the volunteer side of it. I think we've lost a level of respect for our hierarchy and our paramilitary organization. And I'm not speaking towards just the Port Authority. I mean, we have a very well-respected hierarchy here, and it's probably even more so reinforced because it's a career end. I mean, these are
Right.
people's livelihoods here. Specifically in the volunteer end, it's the disrespect of it. It's the entitlement of I need to be a lieutenant in 2 years. I need to move up and be a chief. And unfortunately, you've seen some of this stuff. I'm not going to mention communities, but you just have to open up your eyes and take a look around. And then there's even a level on some of it's a minority of our senior personnel who want to push some of the young go-getters that are good away there. And I think that we need to take a step back in the fire service as a whole and just say, whoa, what are we doing to ourselves here? Because as I had told the Red Bank Borough Council the other night, you could buy the fire department 5 more trucks. Nobody's there to man them anymore, and the staffing numbers aren't going up. Everything is going down, and as a matter of fact, our training requirements are going to be going up as we go through there. So the entitlement, maybe you want to say it's the millennial generation, but then studies say no. You go back and forth on it. But there's just a lackadaisical, I don't care in studying. I don't want to know. I don't want to become a master of my craft. I just want to carry around that title as firefighter, and you give me everything for it. I want to wear a cool shirt. I want to go to Applebee's and get my discount, or I don't know what it may be, and I shouldn't broad brush everybody like that right now, but because many people aren't like that. But it only takes that little cancer cell that is in there,
Yes.
and I slowly watch it degrade places, and specifically, you know, even the volunteer departments that I have in my mind right now. I tell each and every one of them, when they're running good and you're having great times, enjoy it, because everybody has their ups and downs, and you're one step away from somebody throwing a bomb in there, a new person being introduced, a new ego coming into the game. And if everybody was just on the same page and understanding the mission, I think we'd all be a lot better off there. And maybe the past was better. It just seems like there was more cohesiveness, there was more camaraderie, there was more respect for the organization as a whole in the fire service, and more of a care for serving the community, where there's a lot of points that I feel like we got away from that.
Yeah.
And people say that training may have done it, drives people away. I have to tell you, I think that the training's been a great thing. I think that we could go back and credit it to saving many lives and keeping people out
Without
of
doubt.
harm's way.
Not only the civilians, but ourselves, you know, the training.
Yes, and it goes both ways on that.
Yeah.
So that's a hard question there, and there's a lot more I guess we could talk about on that, and we could really drill down on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But and I don't want to make it. I'm trying to be as objective as possible when I talk about that, and not out anything about what's
Yeah.
in my head.
And I'm certainly not looking for that. But my question really is, and my follow-up question to that is, what's your advice? What is your advice to a new guy or girl watching right now, and they want to enter into the fire service, either career or volunteer?
So my advice is definitely, you need to keep up with the education. You need to respect the environment that you're in. You know, there is a lot to be said about somebody who comes in and keeps their mouth shut and their ears open. And I'm not saying it to just say, listen to the guy berate you. I'm not saying that it should be hazed.
Right.
Look at what's going on, take in the environment that you're in. You make your own judgments of people, and just look forward. Remember why you're there. That person who is calling 911 is calling you because they have a really bad day going on. They need your help.
Yeah.
You arrive and the emergency is over. You have to remember that. And I tell each and every recruit that I have in every academy that I want you to do the best. I want you to remember my face and my voice in that moment of weakness when you're in that worst situation, to pull you through. And if it's me you're pulling out of that house, I want you to get me out of that house. I want you to get my son, my wife, my father, wherever it is, cutting me out of the car, whatever it may be. You remember those points. Don't worry about the parties and the cliques or anything else.
Right.
Remember about self-improvement,
The mission.
continuous improvement of yourself, so you can provide the best service to that community. That is the most important things, because no matter what, you're going to be exposed to some horrific leaders, terrible managers. I won't even call them chief officers or fire officers. You're going to be exposed to that. Unfortunately, that's going to be everywhere. Learn from those people of how you don't want to do it, and just keep your eye on the ball there. And I promise you, good things will come to you.
That's really good advice, and I think that's important for our young firefighters that are
Absolutely.
or aspiring firefighters to hear that kind of stuff, because I 100% agree with
Yeah.
you. I mean, chills, man, because it's exactly how I feel. Really, and you hit the mark, because that's exactly how I feel, and I think a lot of people in our era, I guess, if you will, all kind of are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was just vastly different.
Yeah, I don't know where we just went off the cliff with certain things. And,
Yeah.
and there are times in the academy, and again, I'm not knocking anything, but there are times where you're like, well, there's hope. Like, there's a lot of good things. And for the majority of the time, it's there. But then when you see some...
Yeah. What's interesting is you see now more than ever, back when we were in our heyday volunteering, you had, let's say, someone, a lieutenant's position.
Mhm.
You had like 20 guys vying for that position.
Yeah.
Right?
You
And
actually had competition.
yeah. Now it's like, now, like, in not all places, but there are some places where they have nobody that wants to do it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then they're like, going to people, you want to do it? You know?
And that's not, it's not worth it. You need
Yeah.
to have the drive.
Yeah.
You do want the person who wants to be that lieutenant.
Of course.
I don't want to see the person who has 18 months on the job. I mean, it shouldn't be happening on so many fronts, but that's what you're seeing out there. Or they just want it for the title, but there's more than just the title. I mean, I reviewed everything of what we do. You know, the lights and sirens is the great part. That's...
Yeah.
I don't want to minimize it in any fashion. It is there is a hard element to it. It's the easier part. Deal with some of the personnel stuff that's going on is that's what's happening in firehouses nowadays, and that's what has to be controlled.
Yes. The viewers that are watching right now who aren't firefighters or police officers or EMTs or anybody in the emergency services field, they just come here. They come to EWR, they come to this airport, and they're going to get on a flight. And Chris and I kind of laughed because when we were out on the crash truck and we were, cruising around out there, it was a totally different perspective from standing inside that terminal, looking out the windows to seeing what's going on out here.
Of course it is.
What do you say to that commuter that's out there? What do you say to them about what we do here, like what you do here, and what you have to offer them?
You should feel very, very safe in what's going on out there. Traveling by air is the safest means of transportation, and I can tell you that the people that are employed by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey to provide this life-saving service, they're the best out there. Yeah. All right, and the guys and the girls that are doing this work that are frontline operations people as firefighters and crew chiefs, they're very well trained to get out there and get you. I can tell you that their training standards are above what's required of the FAA, and we are looked at and scrutinized in a very good means. And if something were to happen, I promise you that everybody is doing their best to get you out. You are afforded the best chance of making it out on the better side of a scenario.
Yeah, with the professional staff that you have here, the amount of training you have here, the equipment that you have here.
These firefighting beasts are definitely very well equipped to handle the hazards that are thrown their way.
You guys definitely have.
They're there.
Yeah, you have great equipment and stuff.
You can rest assured when you get on that aircraft that you've got the best coming to you.
And then I'm gonna follow that question up with another one, and that is, what's your message to your employees here? What's your message to your firefighters? I mean, this is your hour. This is your time. What do you say to them?
Well, going back to everybody, I'm proud of this agency. This agency really, it magnifies patriotism and service. The Port Authority Police Department has been struck with many terrorist events. I mean, we look out, we can't see it right now because of the mist, but there we go where the Twin Towers once sat. Right. And these men and women, most were serving on 9/11. They know what public service is, and I couldn't be prouder to be standing next to them. And my background of fire, I'm also a licensed pilot, and I served for about 2 years as a federal air marshal. So I kind of embody what the Port Authority is in an aircraft rescue firefighter. I bring the elements of, I know what the flying side of it is, I know what the police officer side of it's like, and I definitely know what the firefighting side of it's like in serving all the capacities. And when I see that, I couldn't be prouder of the people that I'm around there, and understanding what their police department has been through, what our people actually mean. I mean, they are the Mecca. I mean, we look on the side of our truck, we have the World Trade Center 9/11 memorial patch on there, and that's on purpose. Yeah, that's to remember, what their brothers and sisters had done, before them, and the sacrifice that they made, and we're not going to forget that. And couldn't have asked for a better place to be employed at and be a part of the team that we have here and work with the people. And it goes even beyond that. I mean, everybody that we work with. I mean, I most admire our acting deputy chief at Newark and Lathy Workus, and knowing the time that he's put in at Ground Zero after the towers had collapsed, and the personal effects that happen along with that there, and you get to see all that with these guys, and to see that everybody still wants to go on and do it again.
Yeah,
nobody looks back.
The love for this fire service is what really is like a punch to the gut. Man. It's amazing.
It is.
It really is amazing.
You're really in Ground Zero of loving public service and wanting to take on the next emergency and not caring what happens to you.
Yeah, you lose 37 members, and then you still have that desire and that passion to move forward and drive on and remember those lives in the back of your mind. They're always there, but you're always moving forward on your mission. Yeah. And that's powerful.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. Well, Chief, listen, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be, part of your operation here and getting to check things out.
We've had a long day.
We did have a long day. It's but I tell you, being in the crash truck with those guys they were great. I got to tell you, I know I told you off camera also, but the time they took with us to show us around and
they care.
They do. They really do. And they were both great. And the sergeant had just graduated, correct?
Yeah, Sergeant Madigan just got out. Yeah,
just graduated.
It's fantastic to see that it's the result of the training And it's great to see that we're able to validate that training and seeing what these guys are able to do. I mean, you coming in, you learned a lot from these guys. He's
absolutely
fresh on the road, just a couple months.
And one of the things I loved about what he said was he said, you know, you got that self-evaluation, which I use that word all the time. And he said, you know, I was kind of getting stagnant in my role with law enforcement and my role, you know, and I didn't want to feel that way. I didn't want to ever come to work and feel like I'm not, you know,
How
100%.
admirable
Right.
to go self-evaluation and self-improvement, continuous improvement.
So
I love it.
What does he do? He signs up to do more and get more educated and
Yeah.
become a firefighter. And I thought that was pretty cool. You know, that's a difficult thing to do.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
Look in the mirror, huh?
Yeah, it was good stuff. So Chief, before you leave, I have some cool stuff for you.
Oh.
And you know, listen, when you come on the show, you got to get stuff.
We got to get free stuff.
You got to get stuff. So the first thing I always give out is our patch. So
right.
anybody who comes on the show, the only people who get them are people on the show.
I'm honored.
There you go. So yeah. So those are from Eagle Emblems and Graphics.
Thank
guy
you.
Sal, he's a phenomenal guy. At Staten Island. And then of course decals. A fireman all love. Everyone loves decals. So you got a PintheQ sticker for your lid. You got you one of our new decals, and this here is from Elite Blue Line Emergency Lighting. They have a graphics division now, so they made this for me. And of course, if I say of course, because for us it's just like second nature, but there's an organization called Next Rung.
Very familiar with them on Facebook.
There you go. So we give this, if you would just keep this here for the guys.
Absolutely.
In the house. And then I have their new one here, which is called The Real Talk, and it just has some additional resources on it.
Okay.
And also from Next Rung, Blake wanted me to give you a wristband and a pen.
All right, we'll put this wristband on now.
Nice. I'm wearing mine. And from me, I wanted to give you our new T-shirts. And these are No One Fights Alone. Kind of with the mission we were talking about earlier, just being prepared, the preparedness side of firefighting. So that's for you, bro.
Admirable.
Thank you very much. And of course, that comes with the decal.
Thank you very much.
So and all kind of swag.
And of course, listen, what's not giving you a patch? So we're going to give you this patch. This actually, awesome. I wore that on my shoulder once. I don't know why I had it in my glove box, but I did. But I figure no better person to go to than you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
A worn patch is always better than a patch.
No patch at all.
No sitting there. Thank you so much. Well, here you have it, folks. Another episode of PintheQ Podcast. We've been trying to send you some different content. And what other different is this? This is pretty different. So from Newark International Airport, EWR, thank you, Chief, for having us.
Thank you.
Port Authority from New York and New Jersey. Stay safe, be careful, and look out for each other.
So long.